This is considered 3/8. This is considered 1/4. I am a bull in a china shop, so I have to use 3/8. All right. So this is a bender. We found a design on Amazon, on YouTube. We tweaked it a little bit to make it more our style. I think I'm having echo, so I got to figure out how to turn that echo off. Hold on. Now, sometimes trying to bend it in here, if it's a smaller piece, is kind of hard. So we developed this. It's just 2 pieces of rebar welded together with a nut on the end of it. And it's for when you need to bend something straighter, but it hurts your hand to bend. It gives you more leverage. When you're dealing with stronger metal than the 1/4, you want as much leverage as you can get. Now we have also.
Tell them how you build.
I did. I told them. Oh. Right. This. You take a piece of rebar, put it between here, which is two angles, 2 90-degree angles, pieces of metal. You close it together on the rebar, and then you just weld. And you want to put a strong, sturdy weld on there because you do not want to be bending and end up causing it to fall apart and end up hurt. Dealing with metal, it's easy to get hurt because it is sharp on the edges when you cut it with the bolt cutters. Where's the bolt cutters? Where's the bolt cutters? Where? Hold on. When you cut metal with a pair of bolt cutters, it ends up causing this right here to become very sharp on the edge. So you want as much leverage as you can get so you don't accidentally hurt yourself. We use a projector. It doesn't have to be an expensive projector. This is just a cheap $69 projector. Comes right off of Amazon. We use a projector instead of printing our designs out because if you want them larger or smaller, you don't have to keep printing and printing and printing to get to the size you want. All you have to do is move your projector forward or backwards. We built this train. We built some T-posts. The T-posts, you drive these into the ground, and then you zip tie the train onto the T-posts. We have in the past, sorry about that, we have in the past built little legs for the bottom of the wireframe and tried to jibe the wireframe into the ground. Doing so, you have a tendency of bending the wireframe. Using T-posts, here's another example of a T-post. Using T-posts, you zip tie the wireframe to the T-post after you hammer this into the ground, and then you don't have to necessarily worry about bending the wireframe. We like to build wireframes that can be used for multiple holidays. We have Minions, we have the Charlie Brown. We just this year decided to build a train for the yard. Today, while I was waiting on getting classes started, I built a smokestack for the train. It's going to be zip tied to our T-posts, and it's going to go about right here from the train. Give me just a second and we'll zip tie it to the T-post and show you how that looks. Just a second, we're going to do that for you and then show you how that looks. All right, so there it is, zip tied to the T-post, and then there it is on the train. still have to hold it a little bit because our ground is it's not dragged into the ground, so it's still a little wobbly. We built candles. If you can see the candle, we built candles. And I want to show you how you zip tie the pixels onto the wireframe. We use spacers. What we do for the spacing is we got these little pieces of metal left over that we cut off of these. And then we go between each pixel, we put the little spacer in between. Some people prefer to have them as close as possible for more detail. I'm in the idea if you want more detail, just build the wireframe larger. So once we build the wireframe, we take a pair of nice size pliers. Make sure they have a cutter on them. I don't know how good that's coming up on the video, but make sure they have a cutter on them. You cut the zip tie, not all the way at the zip tie. You want to leave some room above the zip tie. Okay, I don't know if this is going to come in good on video. Yeah, please do. I can't really see. Is that see? No, that's not what. Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. This is my first time ever trying to teach a class. So right here's the zip tie we cut. See how there's some excess right here? You want to leave that excess because over time with heat, especially down here in South Georgia, the zip tie, no matter how tight you tighten it, will get loose. By leaving some room, all you got to do every year to tighten it is to take your pair of pliers and pull forward or backwards against the zip tie. That's going to cause it to pretty much lock in place. But again, because of heat, you always want to leave a little bit of that zip tie left over. Now, we end up causing, on our wireframes where they need to be jumped from pixel to pixel, all you gotta do is take some 18-3. We like to use Max Bright off of Amazon because it works, it's kind of cheap, it's good quality wire. And all you gotta do is we solder it, then we put white heat shrink on it, then we put black heat shrink on it, then we solder it, we pull the white over it, then we heat shrink the white, and then we pull the black over the white so you don't see a bunch of white, basically at night all you're going to see is this black wire. You're not going to see a bunch of random colors. In the past, I have used butt connectors. Where they're at. But butt connectors, you just grip on the wire. But the thing about those is they leave like the color of the butt connector. You can use solder sleeves, but again, the problem with that is it leaves the color of the solder sleeve. So if you solder it, then pull the white over, heat shrink, and then pull the black over, all you're seeing is the black wire. Okay? Again, instead of using the thinnest metal, that is this thin, because it bends rather easy, even in your hand. We prefer to use a little bit stronger metal. Why? Because it does not bend as easy. I'm a woman in a china shop. When I go to put up my decorations every year, I'm not the easiest with them. What else do I want to say? Okay, yeah. So the reason why we chose wireframes in the first place. This train cost us $12 to build. Coro, as good as Coro is, and I'm not knocking it because a lot of people use Coro, the shipping alone on Coro is more than $12. So we use wireframes. Now you can buy pre-made wireframes on websites. They cost anywhere between $200 and $700. They use, again, most of them that you find on websites are going to use this thinner metal. You may be lucky and find some wireframe manufacturers that prefer to use thicker metal. When you weld, you want to make sure you put a nice, strong bead on here all the way around where the metal connects. By putting just a little bit of bead on there, when you go to put them up, you'll have a tendency of them falling apart. We use 0.35 welding wire. Some people use 0.3 welding wire. The 0.35, because we're using such a thick metal, is the one we prefer because it gets hotter before it cools down. When you're welding, the only time that welding wire is hot is as soon as it contacts. Now the rest of it, you don't want to touch it with your hands because it's still hot. But the only time it's hot enough to penetrate this metal is as soon as it's touching the metal. So we use a thicker welding wire. You can buy a 1 pound spool for about $20. You can buy a 10-pound spool for about $65. We go with a 10-pound spool. It costs a little bit more up front, but per foot, per pound, it's cheaper. You can buy the welding wire at Harbor Freight. You can buy it off of Amazon. You can buy it off of the big box stores. We just go with the Harbor Freight welding wire. Now, people have their preferences, flux core, MIG. What's the other type of welding? Stick. There's the MIG.
MIG and TIG.
MIG and TIG. We use flux core. We like to weld outside instead of trying to weld inside, just in case a spark happens and it catches stuff on fire. What am I going to say? Oh, yeah. So we bought a titanium 170 from Harbor Freight. At the time of our purchase, it was about $650. I don't know what they're running nowadays. We've been building wireframes since about 2018. We've been putting out our light shows since about 2017. Now, when we first started, we built a CNC machine to build like little candy canes. I'll post pictures of those onto the Facebook group one day to show y'all what we originally started with. But I wanted something stronger than wood because with our environment and the weather that we have, wood tends to warp so easily. So we've decided to go with metal. Now, these three is how we built that smokestack up there. What we did was we took, where's that little pot over there? We took this pot. Hold on. Down onto a piece of wood. Now, we can always reuse the same piece of wood. We just have to sand these weld spots down and then repaint it white. On pieces of paper that you print out from the computer, you can reuse the back side of the paper, the ones that don't have anything on them. But this wood, you can use it all day, every day. We prefer to sand with 80 grit sandpaper. Sometimes if our weld spots are too noticeable, we'll use 60 grit. And then just paint it white with tilts.
It's over there.
What? Okay, yeah. So, in order to cut the pixels to where you can actually add the little extensions, these right here, the jumpers, you want to get a good pair of wire cutters. Some people use the wire cutters that has the little lip up here, and they just strip all three wires at the same time. I've tried them in the past. My hands just can't grip them correctly. My hands aren't that good. These, however, from from Home Depot, about $15–20. My hands grip them pretty easily. Welding helmets. Again, we just got a basic welding helmet from Harbor Freight. Cost us about $50 at the time of purchase. You want to get one that's got auto darkening. Auto darkening means that you can put it on. Still see, you can still see through here till you go to weld. You don't want one that automatically goes black because then you can't figure out where you're supposed to weld at. Okay, also, make sure that you got a good pair of welding gloves because this stuff will burn your hands otherwise. They sell like little heat resistant gloves, little plastic gloves. Will not recommend them. Make sure you get some leather or some cowhide gloves.
Sure.
Lincoln Electric is the brand we use. You can pick it up at Home Depot. Cheaper gloves than cheaper gloves when you go to weld. They'll cost it. This one's already got a little bit because I'm not that careful. But cheaper gloves will burn the finger to where you can't get your hand in and out of the glove. These gloves, you can reach pans and stuff out of the oven with. I would not weld with these because the heat from the welding wire goes straight through these. Pro tip, always make sure when you weld, you have somebody there with you, just in case when you go to weld, the material slides and it falls down on you. I have burned myself more than once. Make sure you're wearing a good type of boots, because wearing tennis shoes, unless you like spending money on socks, wearing tennis shoes in mine, the sparks will get into your socks and cause you to have multiple holes all throughout your socks. And make sure that you have work boots on when welding. Another thing, make sure that you're not using a good shirt because it will burn holes in your shirt. Some people prefer to use these things called a welding apron. I don't really use them, but they actually keep the welds from sparking into your clothing, which prevents them from burning your stomach. I've actually burned my stomach a few times. What else I want to tell them? Okay, yeah. So to learn to weld, I always say start with straight pieces of metal and try to weld them together, and then bend. If you bend and it's a strong enough weld, they won't fall apart. But when you weld them together and they bend and they just fall apart, that means you either have to turn your amps up on your welder or your wire speed up on your welder. We prefer to use anywhere between 14 to 16 amps. Again, you want to make sure that you're using a 12 gauge or thicker electrical cord or plugging directly into the wall with your welder. You don't want to use a thin welding wire or thin electrical cord with your welder because it won't provide it with the power that's required to weld with. Okay, I believe that's all I can that's all. I believe that's all, but if there's any questions, I'm free to answer any questions.
So Herschel.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so can you what kind of power are you going with your welder? Is it 120 or 240? What you using?
With our titanium 170, we're using 120.
You using 120? Okay.
Now I've seen that they do have welders that has converters on the inside of them that takes a power source from AC, converts it to DC, and it causes a cleaner weld. And I've also seen people recommend using a higher voltage. On our stick welding, which is, do you have one of the sticks? We have a stick welder and we have a shed specifically designed for it, which has 220 volts. My dad's going to try to find one of his sticks that we use when we go to weld with it. And when we need something structurally sound, when we need something that will not absolutely fall apart, we use 6013. I don't know if that's coming on in the video. Welding stick.
Okay.
And you have to have a certain welder in order to use this.
Yeah.
But they cost anywhere between $600 and $800. We have one in our other shed, and we have 220 specifically designated for it. With our 120 titanium 170, we're not necessarily needing anything stronger. Let me pull this down.
Just keep voting.
We just weld the ever living crap out of stuff.
Yeah, that looks like my weld.
Make sure that it will not pop off. Now, some people want a thinner, smaller weld, so they go with 220 volts on a 120 volt welder. Most welders, as far as sub $800, 120 works. As long as you make sure that you're putting a strong enough weld. I know you probably can't see that, but we welded on both sides. As long as you're putting a strong enough weld, right here's a good example. As long as you're putting a good enough weld here, that right here will not fall apart. Now, when we want something, and if we use, say we use this real thick stuff to weld with, we'll crank our welder up to 16 amps. Most stuff, 15 amps. This thinner stuff, some people weld with it, some people use it. Me, because I'm a bull in a china shop, I can't use it. Is there any other questions?
I'll ask another one. So for your supports, would you driving those in the ground?
Yes.
The wireframes too. What size of steel are you using for that?
That's the 1/2, right? The T-posts are made off 1/2, right? 1/2 inch.
Okay. And the size of your T is just what, a couple inches?
Depending on if we're using small stuff like the smokestack, or if we have to show him this part. Or if we have a longer piece, we'll use a longer T.
Okay. So like there, to support the top of the train, you'd use a piece that's the length of the top of the train.
Yes, we put our T's up there, but sometimes through the middle of the train, where the pixels give us room, like say between these two pixels right here.
Yeah.
Where we have room, we'll put a zip tie through it. Now this is the one that I'm talking about. We used to build the frame where it would actually stick in the ground like this.
Yeah.
Over time, we've decided that doing that, you'll have a tendency of bending your frame as you're putting it in the ground. So these T's, you can just hammer them all day long till they're in the ground, and you just zip tie the frame to them.
Herschel, you have a question. They're asking if you can show us some bending a few pieces of bar for the train and then fitting them to the pattern hanging in the background?
Yes. They want to know if we can show them the bin there.
The van.
Yeah.
Which one?
Okay. So this, I can't get, okay. So here. Here. Now, if you want it tighter, here, bring the video over here. Again, we put it in our 90s. This is our 90 bender. You can bend 90s, 45s. Basically, this was for something that's not going to be round. You bend it too much? See how it's too much of a bend? You just put it back in your 90 and you bend it the opposite way. So instead of bending it towards you, you bend it away from you. So then there you go. Now,
My video quality isn't great, so
this piece right here, we bent using this ring roller. Counterclockwise to tighten it. You don't want to tighten it too much, because if you tighten it too much, it's harder to pull it out this side.
Herschel, about how much does
Now see right here how this connects to this and it's not letting me go around? All you need to do is bring this back to where it's underneath, pull over, bend it back to where it's underneath, pull over, so you're clear away from this metal. Then you want to make sure that you bend it all the way this way and all the way this way. The reason why is because when you're bending it, you don't want to pull this way and then do that. Doing this, you'll kink this metal up. So again, you bring it back around, you bring this over, and you bring this around. Now to take it back out, this is what's always been confusing to me. You go clockwise. Counterclockwise and clockwise has a lot to do with it. This, the wheel, you see how it's tuned in? You put it back in your bender. You want to make sure that you have plenty of clearance to put it back in your bender. You want to hold it while you're tightening the bender. Now on your bender, you have two sets of bearings on both sides here. You want to put the metal where it rides on the inside of the two bearings. Sorry about that. That's loud. So once you have that done, you take it back out. You compare it to the size of your wheel, about the correct size. Then you want to mark it with a pen or a chalk pen. You want to mark it where you want to cut it. Using this bender, you see how right here it's straight? This is what my dad was trying to set up for, so we can show you all that as soon as I get this cut.
Bang on it. Just go ahead.
Hold on.
So Herschel, we have just about 5 minutes or so until we got
Okay.
the other one.
Real quick to show you it fits. All right. So you see how it's a good circle? And it fits right there. So that's how you figure out how to bend it. You know, with this bender, if you go too tight, say you drop this thing down too far, it'll cause it not to want to bend at all. So we can only bend circles realistically about 5 inches. It's about 7 inches. But you can bend about a 5-inch circle using this particular bender. The one at Harbor Freight you can use, it can bend stuff like the 1/4, but it can bend that 3-inch circle, which is a smaller circle. So it all depends on what size circle you're wanting. So is that all for today? Is there any other questions?
Anybody else have any more questions? Feel free to speak up now. Sounds like we're good, Herschel.
All right, y'all take care. Now, how do I leave here without closing the room so I don't lock out the next host?
I'm still the host, so you're good.
Okay, good. All right. Take care, everybody.
You too. Thank you.